wonder which is your favourite introduction to a Christmas film. Is it the opening monologue of Love Actually, as Hugh Grant narrates scenes of the arrivals hall at Heathrow Airport, as families, friends and lovers hug and kiss as they're reunited, and concludes that love actually is all around us? Or is it Bob Newhart, perhaps, as the dad of Buddy, the elf, played by Will Ferrell? Or perhaps the prayers for George Bailey at the start of the film It's a Wonderful Life? Or perhaps it's Kevin's family packing for that trip to Paris as the baddie Joe Pesci impersonates a cop from Chicago to try and discover whether the family will be home alone over Christmas. Each is memorable and sets the scene for the film that follows. Just like the silhouette of James Bond 007 walking across the camera and shooting at it. Perhaps Julie Andrews with that scenic overshot at the start of The Sound of Music. The start of a film or a book is really important. They're iconic and make a statement of intent. And it's the same with the accounts of the life of Jesus. Both Matthew and Luke begin with the family trees, the genealogies of Mary and Joseph. Mark, in his gospel, gets straight down to the action. It's often referred to as a tabloid gospel. Whereas John takes a very different approach as he starts his gospel, his biography, if you like, of the life of Jesus. These first few verses of John's gospel have been called the single most influential short passage in the history of Christian theology. They're poetic, they're deliberate, and beautiful. One writer has even described them as one of the turning points in the whole history of thought. John's gospel, you see, is for creatives and artists. It's not for the practical or the pragmatic. It's about mystery and paradox, not events and details. We've perhaps become used to hearing these verses at the climax of the 9 lessons and carol services on Christmas Eve, as the climax of Advent arrives, as Christmas itself is announced. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. It is, if you like, John's manifesto, his statement as to who Jesus was and is. And he manages to relate Jesus to the whole of the Jewish scriptures and the Greek or pagan influence across the entire Roman Empire, all in a few poetic phrases. It is astonishing. And it's remarkable to notice the words and phrases that are used in just those first 9 verses of John chapter 1. Words like God, Word, creation, all things, all people, life, light, darkness, John the Baptist, witness, testimony, belief, the world. They're all there in the 9 verses. And it's all about establishing the identity of Jesus, or as the writer Chuck Swindoll calls it, the identity of deity. John manages to connect Jesus to the beginning of the universe, all the Jewish scriptures and Greek philosophy, all at once. With that simple phrase, in the beginning, en arche in Greek. It's a deliberate echo of Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, Jesus was there. He didn't come into existence at the first Christmas in Bethlehem. He's always existed with the Father. In John's words, he was with God and was God. And he's the Word, the Logos. In Hebrew, the Word creates, reveals, saves, and is wisdom. In Greek philosophy, the Logos is the principal reason underlying all reality, the why everything is. John says that principle is a person, Jesus. Everything was made through him. And he is light, and that light shines in the darkness. And the darkness has never beaten it, overcome it. The darkness couldn't put it out. It's so rich. John is trying to explain who is God and who is Jesus. Jesus is the light. It's a recurring theme in John's gospel. And light brings illumination, intimacy, and ultimately the incarnation. No matter how dark it might get, the light still shines in the darkness. That's where light does its best work. Light isn't designed to work in the light. Light works best in the dark. John is using poetic imagery to conjure up a picture of Jesus. Because in the early church, people had all sorts of funny ideas about Jesus with all sorts of funny names. So, for example, there was Ebionism, the idea that somehow Jesus was just a human, but divinely appointed, but at the end of the day, just a man when all was said and done. Then there was Docetism. Jesus only seemed human, but he wasn't really. He took on the appearance of being human, but really was divine all the time. Then there was Gnosticism, the divine Christ uniting himself with the human Jesus for a defined period of time, possibly be from his baptism up to just before the crucifixion. But the divine Jesus left before the cross. And then there was Arianism. Jesus was somehow created by God. There was a time when he was not, an idea still put forward today by Jehovah's Witnesses or Christadelphians. In contrast, John, who lived with Jesus for 3 years, who had a front row seat, writes these words: "We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." Jesus, you see, living to show us what real living looks like, dying so we might be forgiven, becoming frail, fragile, human, and yet divine, all at the same time. He wasn't God and humanity inside a body like two people inside a pantomime horse. He wasn't God inside a human body like a letter inside an envelope. But he was both fully God and fully human at the same time. God becoming a human being, the wonder of the incarnation. Or as John sums it up in far, far richer and more beautiful language than mine, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can't put it out.